Hey folks, hope you all are doing well. I'm Karan Bandal from Economist site, and in this video let's talk about the rise of the consumer class in Asia and India's pivotal role in it. Consumers are the lifeblood of the global economy, the driving force behind the market dynamics and the ultimate regulator of demand. But who can we consider a consumer? Under the definition used here, a consumer is classified as someone who spends at least $12 per day. And currently, more than half of the world's population is in the consumer class, about 4 billion. This consumer class is only getting bigger by the year. About 100 million people are expected to be added to the consumer class worldwide in 2024 alone, and many more by the end of the decade. By 2030, China will lead with slightly more than a billion consumers, and India will be a close second with about 770 million consumers. Among the top 5 consumer markets, India will see the biggest rise in the number of consumers at 46%. Then the United States, Indonesia and Brazil will round out the top 5 markets with the most consumers as projected by 2030. The concentration of almost 2 billion consumers in India and China alone could have wide-ranging effect on the global economy. Businesses may shift their focus to cater to these markets, and we are already seeing that. With China, it's a different story right now, and if the CCP's policies towards the world remain combative, India is likely to receive even more attention from global business houses. Good news accompanying the rise of the consumer class in India is that of the extreme poverty elimination. Recently, India's official consumption expenditure data came out for the financial year 2022-23. This data, as analyzed by the 2 economists from a leading American think tank, the Brookings Institution, state that India has eliminated extreme poverty. The analysis notes that India's real per capita consumption has grown almost 3% per annum since 2011-12, with rural growth significantly outpacing the urban growth. Also, there has been an unprecedented decline in urban and rural inequality, with a greater fall in the urban Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient, to explain briefly, is a measure of inequality. Lower the number, the better. A low Gini coefficient implies that there is less economic disparity among people within a given society, meaning a more equitable distribution of wealth and resources. The decline in India's Gini coefficient points to a sound execution of welfare policies. This combination of robust rise in expenditure and a large decline in inequality has almost eliminated extreme poverty in India. The headcount poverty ratio, that is the proportion of a population that lives below this poverty line, has declined to just 2% in 2022-23. Urban poverty is down even further to only 1%. But there is one caveat here. The free food supplied by the government to approximately 2/3 of the population and other social welfare programs have played a key role in achieving this admirable feat. Now, what happens if for some reason the government's finances take a hit? A step up would be to skill up this segment of the population so that they can be fully self-reliant for their basic needs instead of being dependent on the center's finances. So, India's poverty statistics have gotten better, the consumer class is rising, and now the country's affluent class is also expected to take off. This is according to a recent report by Goldman Sachs. Here, the affluent class is defined as someone who earns an annual income of at least $10,000. Now, from the Western standpoint, $10,000 per year may not sound like much, but it stretches quite a bit in India due to the low cost of living there. In 2015, only 24 million people used to fall in the affluent class. Currently, this number stands at 60 million, and Goldman Sachs predict that by 2027, around 100 million Indians will enter this segment of the population that will have a leftover income for discretionary spending. Global firms are looking at this and planning their India expansion strategies. For example, Tata Starbucks, a joint venture company between Tata Consumer Products and Starbucks Corporation, announced recently that it will have 1,000 stores in India by 2028. The coffee chain currently operates about 400 stores across 54 Indian cities. Other international chains such as Tim Hortons and Costa Coffee have also been striving to gain a foothold in this market. Rising incomes of the affluent class are reflected in higher domestic inflows into Indian equities. India's market capitalization has risen by over 80% in the last 3 years and now ranks 4th highest in the world. Look at another asset class. Property prices in the country have shot up by more than 30% since 2019 on the back of a strong housing demand. Then India's spending on travel is said to be 4th highest in the world by 2030. Indians are projected to take 5 billion leisure trips by then, with 99% of the travel within the country. And to meet this booming demand, Indian carriers have been placing record aircraft orders. Indigo, Air India, Akasa Air, just between the three of them, over 1100 planes are on order. To wrap it up, all sections of the Indian population seem to be on their way up. Poverty, a chronic crisis in India, may finally be on its way out. Both the consumer class and the affluent will power India's economic growth in the coming decade. All government needs to do now is to support this private consumption with capital investment in soft as well as hard infrastructure and reduce wasteful expenditure on subsidies. I hope you found this analysis interesting. I'll speak with you again next week. Until then, take care.